Football season is here, and the Pittsburgh Steelers play this Sunday against the Atlanta Falcons. The Steelers are 3-point underdogs, and those odds courtesy of betonline.ag, today's presenting sponsor of the Believe in Steelers show. We're keeping it in the Believe family with today's guest. We're going to pay some bills with betonline.ag. They've got player props, over-unders, spreads. If you want to get in on the football action, betonline.ag is the place to do it. You could use our promo code. You can see that on your screen right now. That's BLEAV to get started over at betonline.ag. BetOnline, the game starts here. Welcome into the Believe in Steelers show. I'm your host, Mark Bergin. We're keeping it in the Believe Network family. Let's bring in today's guest. He is Kevin Knight, host of the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. Kevin, first time we're meeting, and our teams do battle on Sunday. Football season is here. I'm fired up. It's good to see you. Good to have you here on the show.
Yeah, no, it's exciting time. Week one finally here. We won't get a ton of opportunities to talk, the two of us probably, with these teams playing approximately once every 4 years. But nice to see you. Good to meet you. After we kind of had a missed opportunity last year in the preseason. So
listen, I'll be a little facetious and say it's going to be good to reconnect with you in the offseason when Kirk Cousins is a Pittsburgh Steeler.
It's inevitable, right?
Yeah,
the way these things change. So
that's, what are we calling this game going into Sunday? Like the Arthur Smith revenge game, the Arthur Smith Bowl? I don't even know. That's where I want to start the conversation. We'll get plenty into quarterbacks, but your head honcho, now the offensive coordinator of the Pittsburgh Steelers, 3 consecutive seasons of 7-10 football. But the thing I'm looking at least from afar, is who his quarterbacks were in Atlanta. You got all these first-round picks, a lot of good skill position players, but this is why you bring Kirk Cousins in. This is why you draft Michael Penix. But what say you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was interesting to see. I think Smith's biggest failing in Atlanta was how little he prioritized the quarterback position. He went with, obviously Kyle Pitts at 4 over a guy like Justin Fields, who, obviously in hindsight, maybe was a good decision to not go with Justin Fields with the top 5 pick. But after that, it was Marcus Mariota and Desmond Ridder, and then it was Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke. And, none of these guys are starting quarterbacks in the NFL. And I think that really limited what the Falcons offense could do. And I think that in combination with Smith, I think struggling to sort of adjust his offense. I think it kind of stagnated here in Atlanta, particularly in the run game, which was unfortunate because I think we saw some really, really nice stuff from Smith in the run game the first couple of years he was here, where Atlanta clearly had one of the best rushing attacks in the NFL for a few years. It was a frustrating experience for me, certainly. I think I'm one of the only Falcons fans that really liked Smith. I mean, I got to know him a little bit in Flowery Branch. I thought he was a little bit gruff publicly, but I think in person, much nicer guy. And so I was sad to see him go, obviously, but, it seemed like things had kind of stagnated in Atlanta. This team obviously wasn't taking the steps you want to see with the 3-7-10 seasons, 3 straight 8th overall picks. It's never happened before in NFL history, actually. But, I certainly like the guy and will be pulling for him after this week's game.
Got you. Is that kind of the sentiment shared by other Falcons fans, Kevin? What is the sentiment of this game where it's just like, oh, our former coach is playing our team this Sunday? No, you're trying to make it back to the playoffs. I know that the quarterback position is something you're trying to get right, but what do Falcons fans feel about the return of Arthur Smith week 1? These storylines write themselves.
I think Falcons fans want to take it to Smith. I think this is definitely a game. I think the Falcons fans in general were pretty upset with the way things went under Arthur Smith. So I think they're looking forward to hopefully, a Falcons victory. I think they would kind of like to take it to Smith a bit this week. I'm sure that some of the team members would as well, even if they'd never admit it. But, for me personally, it's like I don't really harbor that much ill will against him. I mean, I was certainly frustrated on Sundays, but I think Falcons fans may harbor a bit more of that ill will. So they would probably be happy to hand Smith a big L on Sunday.
See, from Pittsburgh's standpoint, though, and I don't know how the players feel, the Falcons players that played under Smith, if you will, but from the Steelers standpoint, I would think that knowing a team's strengths and weaknesses as a head coach would favor Pittsburgh so long as that there doesn't harbor ill will from the players. And again, the thing that I keep pointing back to is like, Marcus Mariota or Heineke or whoever it's been, it's not going to light the world on fire in terms of say, oh, that's an all pro level quarterback there. And that's been the name of the game. We know that all too well in Pittsburgh. The Steelers have been in quarterback purgatory since the end of the Ben Roethlisberger era.
Yeah.
So,
no, I mean, I
go
certainly
ahead.
agree with you there. No, like I think that the quarterback play absolutely impacted what Smith was able to do in Atlanta. And I certainly don't pin every offensive problem on Smith. I do think there was certainly some the quarterback was always going to limit what this offense could do. I think my chief criticism is allowing that to happen and not really ever taking a swing on quarterback. And I think, but that's something that it seems like the Steelers wanted to correct. They went out and got two quarterbacks, and funny enough, so did the Falcons, just in very different ways in terms of how they've acquired these guys and how much they're spending to get these guys. So it's very interesting in that these teams kind of are taking obviously similar but different paths in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, let me piggyback off that because it's like you get two bites at the apple. I know the old adage is like, well, if you've got two quarterbacks, you don't have any. The thing with the Steelers is both Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. You're paying both of those players combined less than $5 million this year. They're both only under contract for the 2024 season. So, like, it's that same dichotomy with Atlanta, though, in the sense that you paid a premium for Kirk Cousins you've got the weapons on paper. I like Drake London. I like Kyle Pitts, two-headed monster in the backfield, Bijan Robinson. I mean, a lot of fantasy football folks are saying, this is my guy this year. But at some point, too, it's like you spent first-round draft capital on Penix. You're going to want to see him play at some point. The Steelers, you want to see what Justin Fields could do because we can see what he could do with his legs, mesmerizing plays, but that means having to bench Russell Wilson. So it's like there are some parallels there. I'd argue Atlanta allocated a lot more resources into quarterbacking. I think Kirk Cousins is a fine quarterback. Are you going to win the Super Bowl? No. But I think there's reason why, you look at the odds with betonline.ag, the presenting sponsor of the show. Atlanta's going to be favored in a weak NFC South division for good reason because you bring Cousins in, he should get this talent right on the offensive side of the football. When you're spending first-round picks consistently on that side of the ball, push comes to shove, this has to be the year the Falcons get it done. You make the trade with Judon as well. I don't want to step on your toes anymore, but I get that they're going in with Kirk Cousins saying, hey, this has got to be the year, playoffs minimum, especially in the division that they play in.
Yeah, that's definitely the expectation. I think the minimum expectation is this team has to make the playoffs and has to get a winning record. This team hasn't had a winning record since 2017, hasn't made the playoffs since 2017. So it's been a really long time. Fans were getting apathetic. It was a bad situation. And I think that ultimately, that's what the Cousins move was about. I think ownership all the way down to PR and marketing and everybody knew this fan base was not going to tolerate another rebuild. They couldn't go into another rebuild here. And the way to do that is to go out and get a veteran starter. They went for the biggest one available in Kirk Cousins. I think that is a good decision because we've seen it. The Falcons immediately, they didn't have any playoff games obviously no playoff games, no primetime games either, and only had one the previous year. The second they bring in Cousins, 3 primetime games with 2 in the first 3 weeks. They get the Eagles, they get the Chiefs in primetime right off the bat, which is pretty brutal start for this Falcons team. We're going to find out how legit they are very quickly. But it's, you get Kirk Cousins in here, this team is immediately relevant, and you know what to expect with Cousins. You're going to be able to get reliable, smart quarterback play. He's not going to make a lot of mistakes. He's going to get the ball where it needs to be. And Cousins thing, he doesn't take a lot of sacks. He gets rid of the football. And, is it going to be the flashiest style of play? Nope. Not going to be the flashiest style of play. But we saw in Minnesota before his injury, if you surround him with high-level talent on the offensive line, the Vikings never really did that. That helps a lot. But they did not really give him an offensive line. But other than that, they gave him some of the best receiver play in the NFL. Obviously, the NFL's top guy in Justin Jefferson. They gave him a good tight end, a good, running game probably could have been better last year, but they gave him good stuff. And I think in Atlanta, you could look at it outside of Justin Jefferson, who is kind of in his own planet in terms of wide receiver play. I think the Falcons, top to bottom, offer a better overall situation for Kirk Cousins. They got a much better offensive line, returning all 5 starters from last year. They got Drake London, who I think he's just waiting for someone to get him an accurate football. He hasn't seen that his entire career. So I think Drake London's going to be primed. I know all the advanced stats say how good Drake London is. They got Kyle Pitts, who I think still sort of we're waiting to see that breakout happen, but I think it could be this year. And they went out and added a guy in Darnell Mooney, who's had a couple down years, but has a 1,000-yard season under his belt. And like you said, Drake, they've got Bijan Robinson, who I think if there's any guy that's going to get close to what Christian McCaffrey has been, and I'm not saying Bijan's anywhere close to CMC yet, but this is the guy that everyone would point to and say, like, this is the next guy in line for that sort of role for his team, that he's going to be that critical to their success. And that's why I think they felt so confident in getting a guy like Cousins, because he's a facilitator. He's a high-level facilitator. He's not going to create on his own, but if you give him the talent, you give him the offensive line, and you give him a good OC. Obviously, we don't know if Zach Robinson is that yet. He can get your team into the playoffs. Now, he hasn't won a lot of playoff games, but neither did Matt Ryan until he was with Kyle Shanahan. Neither did Matt Stafford until he got to Los Angeles. You're always a playoff choker until you're not. So,
Kevin, I want you to be honest here. How many times have you watched Quarterback on Netflix?
I have not actually seen Quarterback. I've not actually watched it yet. I know that I believe he is on there, so I should have.
A fan favorite.
Yeah, he's definitely a character. I think a lot of people see him and think that he's kind of just this. He's just kind of just the NFL dad, and he's such a character. I've really
his teammates love him though, and that's something that I see when he's got the chains with his teammates on the airplane. Being beloved by teammates, and I don't fault him for leaving Minnesota for what we were just talking about, a weaker NFC South division, and you look at the NFC North, which I expect to be among football's best this year. And what do I mean by that? The Lions are coming off an NFC Championship appearance. Green Bay with Jordan Love, the youngest team in football a year ago. Everyone's hyped up in Chicago at the start of the Caleb Williams era. They've got some nice pieces around him too. So he's seeing the writing on the wall where he's like, I can make probably more money in Atlanta, have a more favorable division, get a fresh start, and just have to be, if he just maintains what he's been doing, that is a victory for the Atlanta Falcons. Like it is. And they're paying him for it, but in life you get what you pay for. And that's my nervousness with the Steelers, where it's like, I'm optimistic. Russell Wilson, a 9-time Pro Bowler, a guy who should be a 2-time Super Bowl champion, is a 1-time Super Bowl champion. Fields, I think, is capable of being an NFL starter, but when the dust settled after the draft, no one needed a quarterback, and Pittsburgh wasn't competing against anybody to acquire him. So it's just like, let me ask you this. I want to see Justin Fields play at some point in the 2024 season. Right away, probably not. Maybe some packages for him. But for me, it's week 10, which is after the Steelers bye week. Where are you at after the first 8 games of the year? Week 9 is the bye for the Steelers. If you have a 500 or worse record, maybe you turn things over to Justin Fields at that point, particularly because the back half of the Steelers schedule is much more difficult than the front half.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I'm marking my calendar, say, could we see Justin Fields here? With Michael Penix and the Falcons, is that something that you even want to see in the 2024 season? Or is that something to say, hey, let's let him wait for the full seasons under Cousins and see where we're at going into next season? Where are you at with when you want to see Penix take the field in the regular season for Atlanta?
I think if all goes to plan, he doesn't see the field this year outside of garbage time. I think that's what they want. And I think they're probably correct with that. Penix absolutely dethroned Taylor Heineke. And there was no question after the first preseason game who was the better quarterback, which is impressive for Penix. I mean, I think he obviously is further along and more experienced than most rookie quarterbacks. But I think the team realizes that Penix has a couple of areas that he needs to clean up for the NFL. Most notably, middle of the field throwing. and some mechanical stuff, especially play action. He just didn't do a ton of that. In college, you could see it in his mechanics. He's just not as experienced with it. And the Falcons are going to run a lot of play action. So I think they want him to clean up some things and practice deciphering NFL defenses and throwing in the middle of the field, because if he can do those things, they could stay healthy. There's no reason he can't be a top tier quarterback, because his arm, everyone can see it, right? His arm talent is, it's incredible. He can make throws look effortless. Is it Mahomes level? Maybe a tier below that, right? Mahomes, Josh Allen, maybe not quite to that level, but it's right there in that top tier of arm talent. And I think that's why you take the swing. I think that's why they took the swing. They think that he's not too far away from that, and he offers you that ceiling. But I think the Falcons realize that Kirk Cousins is the better option to win games right now. And while he doesn't give you the dynamic stuff that Penix would, Penix, you could see in the preseason, completed about 60% of his passes with a lot of misses, but then hit like a 50-yard bomb, so Penix is going to be more up and down and more flashy. But I think Cousins is going to avoid sacks, avoid turnovers, and keep the offense on schedule and make the right decisions. He's going to get through his progressions and make the right decisions. And I think that's something that Penix needs time to be able to do at the NFL level. So I think the team is totally confident in Kirk Cousins. They're not really expecting Penix to play this year. But I think they also recognize the thing with Cousins, which he's not been an injury-prone quarterback throughout his career. Barely missed any time. But he did miss most of last season. The Falcons don't want to go into a situation where if Cousins isn't fully recovered, he allegedly is. He's been full go since the start of training camp. But if he were to get hurt, that the season's over, which is exactly what happened in Minnesota. If Michael Penix has to come on the field, the season doesn't feel over. It probably, you're going to make the variance in terms of your Atlanta record prediction a lot bigger. But the season's not over if Penix has to come on the field. So I think that's the other reason they went and got Penix is, look, Kirk Cousins is 36. Maybe he is washed. Maybe the injury sapped him of something and he's not quite the same. So they could make a switch like you're suggesting at some point during the season if they feel like they can get more out of Penix. But I don't think the plan or the desire is to do that. I think 2025 is the earliest you could see something like that. Because the way they structured Kirk Cousins' contract, you mentioned the money investments. Kirk Cousins is only making $25 million this year against the cap, and when you look at the contracts that are getting handed out, that's not very much. It's not $5 million like what the Steelers are going with, but and next year only $40 million against the cap, which again, kind of a discount for what should be an above average starting quarterback. He's not going to see the final 2 years of that deal. I would be shocked if he's playing in Atlanta in 2026, 2027. Very little of that money is guaranteed. So they can move on and prior to the 2026 season or trade Cousins next year without having a ton of dead cap. There's definitely going to be dead cap, but it's doable if you're able to get an asset for him. So I think 2025 is probably the earliest you're looking at Cousins or looking at Michael Penix starting. But he's here if they need him. We'll see how it goes. You can never predict. This Falcons team has been notorious for being hard to predict. So we'll see if something changes.
He can learn a lot underneath Cousins. And if he learns anything about the sport, it's the business savvy of Kirk Cousins as a quarterback. And you just need to go look at the contracts, the way he's played, how the salary cap just keeps skyrocketing. And we've talked to a lot of people here on the Believe in Steelers show about this. Year ago, if you go look at the Nielsen ratings, I think it was like 93 of the top 100 watched broadcasts were the NFL. And the way Kirk Cousins has timed where it's like, oh, my deal's up again. Let me go see what I'm worth, not just to the team that I'm on right now, but on the open market. And if I don't get what I want from the team right now, whether it was his days in Washington, Minnesota, now Atlanta, that should be studied. Like, honestly, if I was a quarterback coming into the league, I'm not saying I'd want Kirk Cousins' career from a standpoint of you want to win a Super Bowl. I understand that. But in terms of the money that man has made, agents should study this. Other players should study this. Other quarterbacks should study this because that man has gotten paid everywhere he's gone in this league.
Yeah. No, he's great at it, and he bets on himself, and he also doesn't play for any. The reason he left Minnesota is because they wouldn't guarantee anything past this season. They offered him a multi-year deal, but it wasn't guaranteed past 2024. And he was like, I'm not doing that. I'm where I am in my career. I need more guaranteed money. So the Falcons were like, sure, we'll guarantee your base salary the next 2 years. Come to Atlanta. And if for something goes wrong, the Falcons could eat everything next year and they would be okay. They could make him a post June 1st cut and actually break even and not, lose cap, which is not ideal, obviously, but it's an option. And if they were to trade Cousins post June 1st next year, they save $27.5 million against the cap. So if Penix is ready, if they're ready to move on from Cousins, and the best case scenario is Cousins plays well, but Penix looks amazing and they're ready to start him. You move Cousins after June 1st for maybe a day 2 pick, right? I mean, the Falcons moved Matt Ryan in a similar way. You save a bunch of money and you start Penix. There's a lot of options for what the Falcons could do with the way they've set up this contract.
It reminds me a little bit of back in the day, and stay with me through the analogy here, when Vic was coming onto the scene and Chris Chandler was the starting quarterback. I understand Michael Penix is a much different quarterback than Michael Vick, but it kind of reminds me a little bit of that, of veteran hanging on and how long he can keep the young gun off the field. And then eventually you got to turn the keys to the Cadillac over to your first round pick. And again, I don't know if that'll happen this season. I don't think it will. And I think that'd be okay too, given Penix's injury history. If you watch that championship game, that college football playoff game, he got hit in the ribs and he couldn't rally his team, but you saw how his teammates responded around him and the respect level that he commanded from playing through a game where you could tell his ribs weren't right. Like you could just tell watching, like if you have two eyes, you could be like, that dude should not be on the field right now. And he tried to battle through. What that does to galvanize the team around you. I was joking about the business savvy of Kirk Cousins. That's something that Kirk Cousins had in Minnesota, though. You don't get those viral moments off the field, on the airplane, celebrating with your teammates, unless you were beloved in a locker room. And that's something that's needed at the quarterback position if you want to have success in the NFL, period.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, I think that's part of the reason the Falcons were comfortable doing the Penix thing. And I think when it happened, I tweeted out, I was like, look, this introduces the opportunity for some serious drama to unfold. Like Cousins was not aware you were going to bring in his replacement immediately. The Falcons told him they might draft a quarterback, but I think,
That soon.
That was a little bit shocking, right? But I think Cousins, who he is, I think the team knew like he would get over it. Like he'll be okay. He can handle it. He's a professional. And he's just so darn nice. Like, I feel like he can't, like, dislike. Like, it's not like Aaron Rodgers, who was like, wow, Jordan Love, I hate you. Yeah, it's like, like, I don't think Cousins is like that. He's just so naturally nice. So I think
I don't think Cousins, just his attitude, would resent Penix. It would just be the organization's decision to draft Penix. And I mean, like, that's why, like, this whole battle with the Steelers, it was never really a quarterback battle. It's like, you're meaning to tell me a future Hall of Fame player right there with Russell Wilson is going to be starting the season on the sidelines holding a clipboard for Justin Fields. Again, I think Justin Fields is capable of being an NFL starter. But this is a guy who's a 9-time Pro Bowler. When he was at his peak, played at a really, really high level. Like maybe not quite MVP caliber, but very close to that. Very close to that when he was in Seattle. Has he been that guy for years? No. I mean, I'm smart enough to know that. But this is where it's like, if you actually followed the Steelers beat reporters, if you actually listened to what Mike Tomlin was saying, I don't understand the national narrative that was out there with the Steelers saying that, oh, this is a quarterback competition between Wilson and Fields. When Fields had his opportunity with Wilson's calf injury to start the year, I think it was because the Steelers wanted to get an extended look at Justin Fields. Fields didn't do anything that was above and beyond what you would expect to say, well, we have to play him. We can't keep him off the field. That didn't happen. And look, like I also am not going to take too much from 3 meaningless preseason games. A year ago, Steelers fans, we were over the moon. 5 drives, 5 touchdowns. Kenny Pickett, we're going to get this offense right. How'd that work out for you? So it's like, I want to see where the Steelers are at after 4 games, after 8 games. Evaluate where you're at in chunks of the season And if it makes sense to turn things over and to turn over rocks, yes, I want to see both players get their opportunity this year, but you've got to do that in the right way. And then again, I mean, everything is all good in Pittsburgh right now, Kevin. Russell Wilson's named the starter and the captain of the team. If you turn things over at any point during the season to Justin Fields, what does that do to the dynamics of the team, to the locker room, how your offense functions? Is it injury? Is it benching? How the Steelers play that out? Like, I think Atlanta's situation's a little bit different because I think it's Cousins' job, so long as he's not injured, relative to the money that you're paying him. In Pittsburgh, because money's not really an issue for either player, it's just like, I think you try to ride Wilson so long as the wheels don't fall off. And if you even start to go sideways or even south, you see what you have in Fields. And this is, look, Mike Tomlin's entering his 18th season, still no losing seasons. On the flip side of that, though, is you haven't had a playoff win since January of 2017. So you're approaching a decade to where you've achieved any kind of playoff success, and those are the stakes for the Pittsburgh Steelers this season.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I'm a big Justin Fields fan. I have been for quite a while. So I would be much more worried about playing the Steelers with Justin Fields. And the reason for that is he's a dynamic player, right? I think the Steelers offense needs that dynamicism because I feel like the way that offense is constructed, and obviously you're more of an expert on this team than me. So if you disagree, feel free to say so. But I think it looks like there's offensive line issues brewing in Pittsburgh from what I've been able to see. I do like Zach Frazier, so hopefully he'll be all right out of the gates at center. I know he wasn't, I guess, the starter in camp necessarily, but Arthur Smith's offense, it's not terribly creative, or at least it wasn't in Atlanta. And the man can grow, right? Everyone can grow and change. But I think this is setting up to be very similar to the mistakes that Arthur Smith has made in Atlanta. And I think the Falcons lacked dynamic stuff. And when they had dynamic players, Arthur Smith kind of failed to really put them in position to succeed. Do you know if the Steelers are going to be more 2 tight ends or more 11 personnel?
I think it'll be more two and multiple tight ends. And the reason for this, Kevin, is you've got George Pickens on the outside. And I guess Van Jefferson is your receiver too. I know the Brandon Ayuk trade rumors were out there. I was in the camp.
That would have helped a lot, I think.
Yeah, but I was in the camp where it was like, look, if that were to have come to fruition, it would have weeks ago, maybe even months ago. And what I mean by that is the analogy I made on this show was it's a little bit of a different situation, but the Bears gave up a 4th-round pick for Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen is an older player, and he is more injury prone. But that was kind of my litmus test where it's like, okay, maybe a 3rd-round pick for Ayuk. I wouldn't see even a 2nd round. I know that Pittsburgh would have tried to sign him to a contract extension, which makes it different than the Keenan Allen situation. But like, that's my price point. Like, that's my frame of reference, right? If I'm Omar Khan and the Steelers in the Steelers front office, the Steelers GM. So it's George Pickens on the outside. Pat Freiermuth, who's entering contract season's a nice player, is coming off a season where he battled injuries. But it's like, if a team brackets Pickens, what's your counter if you're Pittsburgh? And I know you've got a good 2-headed monster in the backfield with Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren, but it's not anything that's like, oh my gosh, it's not a CMC or a Derrick Henry at his peak, or, the elite of the elite when it comes to running backs. So when a team brackets Pickens, what's your counter? Like, that's something that just kind of remains to be seen with this offense. I think Freiermuth's going to be a big part of the passing game, but like, if we're playing Madden, Kevin, there's not another receiver outside of Pickens on this roster that strikes real fear in my heart.
Yeah, I think George Pickens is good. I'm just kind of waiting. In some ways, it's kind of similar to Drake London, where it's like you're just kind of waiting. I think Drake London's been more consistent. George Pickens has had those just tremendous highlights, right? So I think Pickens is another guy that's like, you could see him take the next step to becoming that sort of
and it's there, like when I talk to my co-host Ike Taylor, who scouts for the team, and when Ike was a player, he went up against everyone in the 2000s, early 2010s in the league, so he knows receiver talent.
Yeah, yeah.
And when he calls George Pickens an alien, it resonates with me, right? Like,
Yeah.
at the same time, it's just like, again, if a team decides to double him and just to take him out of the equation, which you can scheme, you can do, you can allocate the players. What is Pittsburgh's counter? And I think that's why the Ayuk rumors were there. I don't know if
Yeah.
Pittsburgh will try to make a deal before the November trade deadline to just get some help there. I know that's why you draft Roman Wilson out of Michigan, battled injuries in the preseason. Up front, I think that's totally fair. And they didn't pick up Najee Harris's fifth-year option for 2025. He probably hasn't quite been what you'd hope for as a first-round pick, but what's his offensive line been like? What's his play calling been like under Matt Canada? It's just like, so I want to see what he can do with Arthur Smith when you've actually finally spent draft capital. When the Steelers took Broderick Jones in the first round of the draft last year, it was the first time the Steelers had drafted a lineman in the first or the second round, an offensive lineman, since David DeCastro back in 2012. So they hadn't spent the draft capital to do what you think of when you think of Steelers football.
Right.
It's crazy to me to say that. And so the year before they drafted Najee, James Conner is battling injuries when he was in Pittsburgh. And it's coming down from the top, Art Rooney, saying, we're not going to finish dead last in the league in rushing ever again. That's just not what Pittsburgh Steelers football is. And so you've tried to get that right. In Najee's defense, he stayed healthy, doesn't fumble the ball. He's good for 8 to 10 touchdowns. It gets you more than 1,000 yards. Decent receiver out of the backfield, good blocker in the backfield. Jaylen Warren, it's kind of like lightning and thunder. He's better than just a third down scat back. It's a nice combo there. What they could do with the competent offensive line, actually creating holes up front, Kevin. Like, this is like, and it's crazy to say this, but think about this, right? Like, watching the game as a fan, these last few years under Matt Canada, when I can predict what the team is going to do before they do it because I watch each Sunday, what do you think it's like for opposing defensive coordinators where they're licking their chops saying, we know the plays that you're going to run before you run them because it's so predictable? And that's been the frustration where this offense has not been right since like the Killer Bees were doing their thing with Roethlisberger and Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown. And that's what you got to try to get right. Like, I love Mike Tomlin. He's been a victim of his own success. The highest draft pick the Steelers have in his era. They traded up number 10 for Devin Bush in 2019. It's the highest pick they've had. But you got to adapt with the times in the league, and it's an offensive game. He's a defensive coach. So those are the stakes of what's riding on trying to get this hire right with Arthur Smith and trying to get this offense right. Because if you do want to go achieve that postseason success, sure, you can sneak into the playoffs as a 6th seed, as a 7th seed. Where is that really getting you in the long run?
Yeah. Well, it's like for the Falcons to be like, oh, great, cool, we'd love that. But it's like, we haven't been there in 7 years or whatever it is, So it's a little bit of a different calculation for the Falcons. But
the Steelers fans are spoiled in that regard, though, my man. Like, it's like a lot of other teams would love to be in your shoes. At the same time, when you've won 6 Super Bowls as a franchise, that's the standard that you're trying to be held to. But again, January of 2017, like, my fear is that you're approaching a decade since you last won a playoff game. There's a slogan in Pittsburgh that the standard is the standard. That also applies in the playoffs.
Yeah. No, that makes sense to me. Yeah, and so like I was saying about the quarterback position, like I think with potential offensive line problems, and kind of a lack of weapons, you need dynamic something and this is exactly what went wrong in Atlanta. Teams could just sit on the run game, bracket Drake London, and there wasn't really anything else. Like, I don't think Arthur Smith used Kyle Pitts anywhere near to his ability. He used Jonnu Smith really, really well. Jonnu Smith had a great season. I love Jonnu Smith, but like he didn't seem to be able to figure out how to use Kyle Pitts. I do think Pat Freiermuth is a better fit for like what Smith wants from his tight ends. Like, he wants an all-around tight end as his guy. But yeah, I mean, I think you got the offensive line issues, and now you have kind of an aging Russell Wilson who, I mean, he's no longer a dynamic player.
Well, it's like, can Russ roll with the punches of, like, you're
Right.
gonna have some struggles up with young players, right? If you
Mhm.
start the two rookies, Zach Frazier's gonna start at center.
Yep.
Right now, it looks like Broderick Jones is gonna be the starter at right tackle. Dan Moore Jr., the veteran in the final year of his deal, is gonna be the starter at left tackle for this game. When do you wanna bring the first-round pick, Troy Fautanu, out of Washington and start him? You put him at right tackle, you move Broderick over to the left side. When the Steelers had some problems in the preseason, because again, these guys are young players. They're talented, but they're young. And going up against a guy like a Matthew Judon in this game, right? So when they struggle and Russell Wilson doesn't have the mobility that he used to have, I totally see your point in saying, hey, Fields would be the better pick there because of his mobility, his escapability. When things break down, he can make magic happen, and that could be to his benefit of a play breaking down and playing off schedule. I totally get your point there.
Yeah. So that's why I would personally have gone with Justin Fields, because Justin Fields, he kind of thrives in chaos. I think he got used to it in Chicago, and it didn't always go well. In fact, about half the time it went really badly. But you also saw some games from Justin Fields. It's part of what made him a tremendous fantasy player was they would just go off. Like, he would just go superhuman. He would run all over people, and he would just deliver some bombs. But, Russell Wilson's going to be the safer option. To Russell Wilson's credit, the one thing he still does well is he doesn't throw picks. That's what he
The
does
ball
well
control.
still. Yep. But like, I feel like an aging Russell Wilson, who we know has already sort of slowed down and has had trouble, he still likes to extend plays, but he doesn't really have the arm strength anymore to really unleash the fury like he used to. And that's what made him so special all those years in Seattle. He would escape the pocket, get out there and deliver bombs downfield. I don't know that he has the escapability anymore, and I don't know that he has the top tier arm strength to make that happen. And I think he still kind of feels like he's the same guy, but he's not. So I think that could create issues. I think that the combination of the offensive line struggles, and that'll I imagine the Steelers' offensive line will gel and like evolve over the course of the season when you have all these young guys. And it seems like maybe Fautanu might not be ready to go this week, which is a loss because I loved his film coming out of Washington. But I think throwing him out there against Matthew Judon in week 1 when he's got like a handful of practices under his belt, probably not a great idea, but maybe still better than the other option. I don't know. So I just think that's a sketchy situation. And I can't believe Arthur Smith went out and got Van Jefferson after Van Jefferson did absolutely nothing for the Falcons last year.
Yeah.
They traded for him. They needed him to come in and play a big role, and he contributed absolutely nothing. And I actually liked Van Jefferson a lot with the Rams. I thought that would be a good signing. Didn't really look like a good option. Looked like a depth receiver. So the fact that I know, like, long-term, obviously, Roman Wilson is going to be the guy. I think he's maybe he'll play this week too. But again, he's another guy who hasn't really practiced at all.
Because of injuries. Because of injuries up front. And it's like, you mentioned Fields, his very first NFL start for the Bears. He was sacked 9 times in a game against the Cleveland Browns. You want to talk about baptism by fire. That's what he came into. Yeah. So he's used to trying to do everything himself with not a whole lot around him. I thought the Bears did a poor job of supporting him when he's trying to get established in the league. And I think that's going to be a huge difference between he and Caleb Williams. We'll see how the Bears fare. But from the Steelers' standpoint is when things break down, both Fields and Wilson, the knock on them is that they hold the ball too long. So, when you want to play on schedule, you don't want to play every single play off schedule and try to make magic happen. The only guy who's really good at that, if we're being honest, is probably Mahomes. And he's in a category onto himself versus everyone else in the league. It's fun to watch, but you cannot operate a successful offense in this league if that's what you try to do, is saying, hey, we're going to have our guy drop back there and create magic. If that's your game plan, good luck.
Yeah. And that's my worry with Smith, with Fields, was that, like, I'm not sure this guy is like capable of designing a game plan for Fields. Like,
but that's where I go back to where I go back to the preseason, it being meaningless of like, I don't think that there are going to be a ton of RPOs. Like, I'll be honest with you, Kevin, I get excited thinking about a Fields run pass option with Najee or Jalen Warren. I don't know how much of you're doing that in the preseason because you don't want to get Fields hurt. You're not game planning for that.
No. but they also like the fact that they go with Russell Wilson means that they probably weren't even considering building an offense for Fields, which again, like that's exactly how I think you like Fields isn't this dynamic passer that I think everyone hoped he would become. Like I think that's pretty clear. But I do think he's a guy that you can, if you have a good offensive coordinator and you build an offense around what Fields can do, which is threaten with his legs, and he's got a cannon. I mean, there's no doubt about that. So you can do a run heavy, play action heavy offense, which you think would be perfect for what Arthur Smith likes to do. But I don't know. It's weird. Like I feel like you've got the two-headed rushing attack, very similar to what Atlanta had last year with Bijan and Tyler Algier. You got Najee Harris and Jalen Warren. You could just make this a very dynamic run game where teams have to account for Fields and you have to keep an extra guy in the box to watch Fields and all this stuff. I was like getting excited when the Steelers acquired him thinking about this. And like, it just concerns me greatly when the decision comes down that it's going to be Russell Wilson. And I'm like, are we really doing this? Like we're going to try to go with a safe quarterback on a team that is kind of weapon deficient with a questionable, at least early in the season, offensive line. Like, I just feel like that's not likely to produce great results.
And what's the best way to get a young line acclimated is to run the ball.
Yeah. And I'm sure they're going to run the ball, but it's like everyone, I mean, look, the Falcons know better than anyone what to expect from an Arthur Smith run game. And that's part of the reason it didn't work great last year is because he didn't diversify his run game at all. It was outside zone almost every time, and teams just sat on it. So I certainly hope he's been able to sort of expand the playbook a little bit more there in terms of the run game. But because when the Falcons were playing really well, they were just crushing teams with these outside zone runs, and everyone just seemed to have figured it out last year in Atlanta, which is it's bad when your rushing attack gets worse after adding Bijan Robinson. I mean, it's that to me was one of those inexcusable things. I was like, okay, this is not okay because I know it ain't Bijan's fault.
Oh,
so
that's amazing.
Yeah. So that's my concern with Arthur Smith. And again, personally, really like the guy, but I worry that maybe it was part of it was being a head coach, just having so much on your plate. You can't really innovate. You don't have the time.
And that's
do
the thing too, is okay, when he was in Tennessee and Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill had their greatest level of success, AJ Brown, it was Arthur Smith who was the guy when he wasn't the head coach. He was the OC. So that's the hope there.
Yeah.
But I totally get what you're saying about Fields of like, I think what you're describing is almost like when the Ravens finally turned things over to Lamar Jackson and he did this mid-season, it saved Harbaugh's job. It saved Harbaugh's job in Baltimore. It did. When Flacco finally, it was done in Baltimore, and then mid-season, it was like, well, let's try to throw the kid out there. And then the next year, they geared an offense around him that was extremely run-heavy, but there wasn't a team in the league that could stop them. Now, catches you up with you in the playoffs when you need to be able to make passes downfield.
Yep,
but in the regular season, that offense, and it's what it is, Kevin, is it's forcing an opposing defense to play an honest 11 on 11, where you have to account for the quarterback too to run the ball. You are not going to get that with Russell Wilson. You're 13, but with Fields, you might.
Yeah, that's what I feel like. The Steelers' offense needed that dynamic injection. And like, it's probably going to lead to higher variance play, but I feel like the upper end of the Russell Wilson experience is just not going to be good enough. And like, the Steelers' defense is still great, so that's my guess. Is this is classic Tomlin football of the last couple of years, right? Where it's going to be, we're going to lean as hard as we possibly can on this defense to keep the score low, and we're just going to try to not make mistakes on offense and grind this thing out. And like, again, that's exactly what you were saying, right? Maybe that gets you to 9 wins when the defense and the coaching in terms of Mike Tomlin is that good, but like, that's not going to do anything for you when you come up against the Ravens. You know, it's not going to do anything for you when you come up against the Chiefs, the Bills, the Jets, like all these teams. Like, are you going to, like, if your offense doesn't crest that level where you can score on good defenses, which I think that's a danger with this offense, you're just eventually going to hit a defense that's too good and you just can't score.
And to clarify to the Yinzers listening, the Steelers fans listening, you're talking about come playoffs.
Yes.
Steelers have had good success against the Ravens the last several years in the regular season. But you're talking specifically when it comes to the playoffs, when it's put up or shut up time, win or go home. What you're talking about, I'm with you there, Kevin. You mentioned the defense. good transition of key matchups. Last time these two teams played in the regular season, it's a bull rush by Cam Heyward up front, causes a forced pressure, and Minkah Fitzpatrick helped put the game away. Cam Heyward signing a contract extension, which I predicted that it was going to be Cam Heyward. As soon as the Ayuk deal fell through, it's like, hey, who are the Steelers entering contract seasons? Cam Heyward. I think Pat Freiermuth might be next. We'll see. We'll see. Speaking this into existence. This made sense to me for this reason, Kevin. The Steelers, before the start of the 2021 season, what do? They lock up Minkah Fitzpatrick long-term. Before the start of the 2022 season, what do? I'm sorry, I've got it flipped. 2021 was TJ Watt. 2022 was Minkah Fitzpatrick. And then now Cam Heyward, who's in the twilight of his career. This to me means you only have this year's contract guaranteed. He'll be a Pittsburgh Steeler so long as he is in the NFL, which is the way that it should be. When he's healthy and right, he's as good as there is in the league up front. But the last time these two teams played, it was late in the game. It was a Cam Heyward bull rush that prompted the interception, and Minkah put the game away. That was the last time this happened. And Minkah Fitzpatrick, coming off a season where he didn't have a single takeaway. This is a guy who's been an all-pro safety. Yeah. It's crazy. In 2022, when he had 6 interceptions, defensively, he was the Steelers' best offensive player. If that makes any sense at all.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm looking at. I'm happy for Cam Heyward, and he is beloved in Pittsburgh. I'm glad they could make the money work out, because I'll be honest with you too, and this is the loyalty of the Steelers organization. Out in the free agent market, I don't know if Cam Heyward's getting this amount of money, but what he brings to the locker room, his leadership, he's played at a high enough level to where that lack of playoff success that I'm talking about, he's played at a high enough level where you'd want to give him a taste of that. He's not getting any younger. TJ Watt's entering the prime of his career. Fitzpatrick. This is a loaded defense. This is a very good defense. Yeah. I think they'll be, if they can be very good to elite and the offense can even be average, I think that's kind of what does the upside of a good season, Steelers season look like. That to me is the recipe. And that's, you mentioned the defensive side of the ball. Patrick Queen coming over from Baltimore. Excited to see that. Another playmaker there. That's a position at the inside linebacker position Pittsburgh hasn't gotten right since Ryan Shazier's injury. So that's defensively, I'm expecting big things. I think it'll keep them in a lot of games. Offensively, if you can even be average, you win a lot of games this season. But it's and I'll be honest with you too, Kevin. Front half of the year is a heck of a lot easier than the back half of the year. So every game's a must-win game. Week 1, the next game's a must-win game. This is a game where if you want to make the playoffs and actually have playoff success, Pittsburgh's got to win. If we're being real here, hop in.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think for the Falcons, this is a critical game because, like I mentioned at the top, we got to go to Philly next week, and then we got to play Patrick Mahomes in week 3.
Yeah.
So I no one's going to be overly upset if the Falcons lose on the road in Philly or to Patrick Mahomes. But if you lose week 1 and you're 0-3
at home,
again, this is very this is kind of the opposite of the Steelers, though. The Falcons have a super easy after bye stretch. They may not play a team with a winning record the second half of the season. So they have the easiest schedule in the NFL. So this is a team where you look at that 0-3 tombstone, as some people call it. For the Falcons with their unique schedule setup, might not be as big of a panic button as it might be for other teams, but you would still love to grab a win in week 1 that lets you kind of relax a little bit. But I think the big concern here is that Steelers front, because it is so damn good. I mean, we know it is, right? Alex Highsmith and TJ Watt are phenomenal players. Cam Heyward, I'm a big lover of interior defensive line play. That's one of my things. Love Cam Heyward, have for a long time. He's one of my guys. So, I think the Falcons are set up well, relatively speaking, to handle a good front. They are returning the same 5 starters. Jake Matthews is one of the most reliable left tackles in the NFL. They have one of the NFL's best centers in Drew Dahlman, particularly in terms of the run game. And then Chris Lindstrom is the NFL's best right guard. So Caleb McGarry had his best season last year. He took a step forward in pass pro and stuff like that. So that helped. The big question mark would be Matthew Bergeron at left guard, who had a solid year as a rookie, transitioning to guard. So the big hope is that he takes a step forward, and then the Falcons have an elite offensive line. So we haven't really had a chance to evaluate them because they did not play a single snap in the preseason with their starting offensive line. So
Okay.
we don't really know. I assume it's going to be okay, but they're going to get a big test this week. For me, the key matchup, like you were bringing it up, I think the Falcons are going to want to go after Beanie Bishop Jr. in the slot. They're not going to let the Pittsburgh Steelers play base. They're going to spread him out. They're going to go after Beanie Bishop Jr. in the slot. They're probably going to try to get Pitts on him as much as they can. And the Falcons are actually going to be a weird team in that they're going to run 12 a lot with Charlie Werner as the actual tight end, and Pitts is going to be their slot receiver. So they will probably try to get Pitts on 5-10. And I know nothing about Beanie Bishop Jr., so please, give me some intel on him.
And he impressed in the training camp and a little bit in the preseason. But the reality is, he's an undrafted rookie who's going to be starting for you there. And the reason why is you bring back Cam Sutton, but Cam Sutton's got an 8-game suspension for domestic violence issues, and that's the reason why the Steelers even were able to bring him back. Detroit cut him, so right. It's like you know what you're going to have on the outside. Joey Porter Jr., we're very high on. Second year.
Good rookie season.
Should be very good. Dante Jackson, seen a lot of football. You know him because he was the corner for the Carolina Panthers in your division. Yep. So you like what you have with those two, but you hit the nail on the head. You're going to be a nickel and dime a lot in the NFL for how the league's played, where you're not going to be able to be in your base defense when you got 4 or 5 receivers on the field. So how you counter that? I think you're spot on there. And look, I think teams will be smart to see what does the rookie have. Now, if you can take that away, okay, maybe we try to do something else. But early on, and just looking at this on paper, we'll see what Beanie Bishop can do. Again, an undrafted rookie. That's a lot for any rookie player, let alone an undrafted rookie player.
Yeah, it's a tough one. And the Falcons are, they like Ray McLeod, former Steeler, right? Mm-hmm. Falcons also have former Steelers wide receivers coach Ike Hilliard on staff now as their receivers coach. So, they like Ray McLeod. He's been solid, but I think what they really want is to get Pitts out there in the slot as much as they can. And you look at the size differential there with Beanie Bishop, 5'10" against the 6'5", 6'6" Pitts, right? I mean, that's
Pitts is going to be a problem
mismatch.
if you can use him right because of the size with the DB and the speed. If you want to put a linebacker on him, and that's like we loved him out of Florida. Come out of Florida, it's just like that. It almost reminded me of like Vernon Davis back in the day, where the measurables were. It's just like if you can just figure out how to utilize this guy physically. I mean, any NFL player is going to be fit, but he's just different than everyone else.
Yeah. No, so the Falcons have given absolutely zero clues to teams about how they want to play. And they showed in the preseason, they played, I believe, 11 personnel, like 98% of the time. That's not what they're going to look like on Sunday. They're going to be playing 12 personnel with Charlie Werner and Kyle Pitts. And Pitts is going to be the slot receiver more than likely. So I think they're hoping to fool teams with that. It didn't fool me, but, maybe it'll fool somebody. I don't know. But, they got to be able to survive the pass rush, and they got to keep the ball out of harm's way in terms of Minkah Fitzpatrick, obviously. Yeah,
you got to chip Watt off that right side. I mean, that's going to be the key of and I'm going to say this too.
Going to be there every day.
I'm going to say this too. As much as I like Watt and Highsmith, this Nick Herbig, a second-year player, every time he's gotten an opportunity to play, whether it's regular season, he wrecked the preseason for other teams. I'm not saying you take TJ Watt or Alex Highsmith off the field, but when they need a blow, when they need a breather, Nick Herbig off the edge he's made the most of every opportunity he's gotten to play. He's going to be hard to keep off the field as well for Pittsburgh's defensive standpoint. I can't believe we're 50 plus minutes in and we'll wrap here soon, but Raheem Morris, year one, getting another chance as a head coach. I know he was very well regarded is in his other stops. He and Mike Tomlin have history in Tampa as well. So I know that they are very friendly as well. I know that they are friends. I'm excited to see what he can do with his opportunity in Atlanta. I really am, because this is someone that I think it is, when you talk to other people in the league, other coaches and other stops he's got, and I know he was under Sean McVay for several years, he's as well regarded as they come in the NFL. And I would think in an NFC South division that this would be Atlanta's running away with. Now you got Tampa there, but it's like other than Tampa, I mean, Carolina and New Orleans. This is not a hyperbole. This is my opinion. I think the NFC South is the NFL's worst division, and Atlanta should run away with this division this year. That's my opinion.
That's my hope. I think if they don't, it would be disappointing. And like respect to the Bucks, I think that is a solid football team. I think they're probably going to win 8-9 games and be a solid football team. I think expecting Baker to play at that level again is asking a lot. And this has been what he's done his entire career. Has a great year, has a bad year. Now, maybe he's starting to sort of equalize a little bit more, but I think it's going to be hard to maintain that level of play there. I think the Bucks are a solid team, though. Should never sleep on a team that just won the division. So that's my take on them. I think the Saints bottom out this year. I think they'll be fighting the Panthers for the bottom spot in the NFC South. I think that Saints offensive line is a catastrophe waiting to happen. That, Trevor Penning is starting again. He was the NFL's worst offensive lineman last year. They're moving their rookie right tackle, Talisi Fuaga, to left tackle. I think that's a very bold decision, given that you don't I know Ryan. They were expecting Ryan Ramczyk to be right tackle, so it's like okay. But now that you don't have Ryan Ramczyk anymore, which that's really sad. Now you're making him switch sides, which I don't believe he's done in a while. Play left tackle as a rookie, and that interior has been extremely problematic for the last year or two. So I think there's a big chance that, Derek Carr is not a guy that can survive pressure. So I think there's a chance that the offense really just craters because of that. And the Panthers, I think they're going to take a step forward, but like a step forward for the Panthers is like 5-6 wins. So, I don't think that team is a catastrophe, but I think it's going to be hard for them to beat good teams. I don't think they're quite there yet.
I'd keep you here till sundown if we talked about the Bryce Young pick, and they haven't done any favors around him at the same time. I like
the Deontay Johnson trade. That's a Steelers connection. I like that trade, but again, it's like, is that enough? I don't think so. So
yeah,
but I do love Raheem. He really loves Mike Tomlin. He was talking today about how Tomlin told him to prepare for Justin Fields, and Raheem was like, "Yep, I will do that." And I think I
wouldn't be surprised if you saw a package or two. Or two. I don't know if they'll roll that out week one, but I liked it. I saw that, and I saw he's impersonated Mike Tomlin.
He does a really good Tomlin impression. It's funny. But I love Raheem.
Things of that nature. There's so many Tomlinisms. Don't even get me started.
He's hilarious. But I think with Raheem, his biggest strength is his relationships throughout the NFL. And that's how he got one of the top offensive coordinators here. Everyone he has a deep list of guys. He got the Steelers wide receivers coach, which I think was a huge addition for the Falcons. And I think ultimately, the players love him and all know him, right? Convinced Justin Simmons to spurn the Saints and come to Atlanta. Convinced Kirk Cousins to come to Atlanta. They basically, every free agent they've gone after significantly, they didn't really get turned down. So,
well, Judon chose the Falcons instead of the Bears when he was getting traded from New England. He had the option, and that goes back to strength of division. Like, read between the lines here in terms of why Kirk Cousins left that division, in terms of why Judon go. And it's like they see an opportunity, and it's like, we can go TCB and let's take care of business in the NFC South, because it's just not as strong as the others in the league. It's just not.
No, you could stumble to 10-7 and probably win this division without too much trouble. The Falcons had a chance to win this division.
I think you might have a sub 500 team that could win this division. I mean, that might sound crazy, but
yes, I hope we don't have to go down that road. But, I think this Falcons team's in line for 10, 11 wins, something like that. I think they're over under 10.5. So something in that range, I think, is pretty reasonable. And it's partially because the schedule is just so easy. I think especially the second half of the season. So I think we're talking about this team as like a 500 team before their bye. And I think they just finish strong and sort of coast in. But we'll have to see. Like, we haven't seen any of the starters in the preseason, so this is a complete mystery. It looks good on paper. The defense in particular looks much better than it's looked in years past on paper. They went out and finally got a guy on the edge that's legitimate in Matthew Judon. The interior defensive line is really good. It was like that last year. When Jarrett and Onyemata were healthy, they were dominating interior offensive lines, and they're both back. They even got Eddie Goldman to come out of retirement. This man's been teasing the Falcons with actually playing for about 3 years now. Actually made it all the way through camp and made the roster. This
I
man
didn't
hasn't
realize
played
he
in
was
like
still
4
in the
seasons.
league.
Yes. The last like several years he would show up for camp and then retire again. This year, Raheem got him to stay and he made the 53, so good for him. But the Eddie Goldman, he's here to play nose tackle, so we'll probably see him on Sunday just because the Steelers, they're probably going to activate their nose tackle for the Steelers. But the defense I think looks a lot better. You love Terrell. Speaking of undrafted corners, former UDFA D. Alford from the CFL. Last year was his first year as a starter. That was his second year in the NFL. This year he's back. I think he's tremendous. So perhaps, Bishop could have a similar arc. They didn't make D. Alford start as a rookie, but maybe that could work for you guys too. But I think the linebacker room's really good with Caden Ellis and Nate Landman and Troy Anderson back there, and obviously the safety duo. With Justin Simmons coming in next to Jesse Bates, I think that is one of the most dangerous safety duos in terms of takeaways in the NFL.
It's all there on paper for Atlanta.
We've said that a lot here, so yeah. It looks great on paper, yeah. So, we'll
Can I ask you one thing before we go here? Is Cordero Patterson, I feel like every team's been trying to figure out how to utilize him. I know he's a very good return man, and that's probably what he is, but I feel like they've been trying to figure how to best utilize his skill set, dating back to when he was playing at the University of Tennessee.
Yeah.
And in the open field with the ball in his hands, he's as good as there is, which is why he's a good return man. But it's we'll use him at receiver, use him at running back. We'll use him in his mid-30s now. It's just I think the one thing I'd say about Arthur Smith, and I can just look at a stat sheet, is his most successful years were with Arthur Smith and Patterson. But did you see anything the last few years when he's been in Atlanta? Because this is something that they've tried to figure out at every stop he's had in the NFL.
Yeah, no, I mean, that I think is one of the biggest feathers in Arthur Smith's cap is he unlocked. I think it's a damn shame that it took this long. But I think Cordero Patterson in 2021 and 2022 in Atlanta, he's a running back and he's a really good one. Not a traditional running back per se, but has a nose for the end zone, really good in the open field, can catch stuff and do good things. I mean, you look at 2021, 52 catches for over 500 yards as a running back, another 153 carries, as well. So, yeah, Arthur Smith figured him out. He's a running back. He is always a running back. You had to use him a little bit uniquely. But, yeah, I think, unfortunately, Patterson hit the wall last year. That was a shame.
We'll see. And offensively,
but
I don't think you'd need him too much. And it's this goofy kickoff that they have now too, where it's I'm going to need to watch it about a dozen more times to fully understand it with the landing zone and everything. But from what I can tell, there's going to be more returns. So if that gives him more opportunity to break one loose, it's a component just because it's something we've never seen before to this point. And it was even in the preseason, it was man, this is an NFL game. This isn't, is it UFL or XFL now? One of the spin-off football leagues. But anyways, He is Kevin Knight. He is the host of the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. Kevin, if there's anything that you need to plug, the floor is yours to do so.
Absolutely, guys. I am also on Believe, fellow Believe show on the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. We also have a live show on Wednesdays, 8 p.m. Eastern on YouTube. It's under the Falcoholic. I do all my writing for thefalcoholic.com on SB Nation. I'm on Twitter at FalcoholicKevin. Check me out there. And thanks again for having me on, Mark.
For Kevin Knight, our guest, I'm Mark Bergin. Thanks for watching the Believe in Steelers show. I'll be back on this feed live after Steelers and Falcons, sharing my reaction from week 1 of the NFL. It is here. Thanks to today's presenting sponsor, betonline.ag. Thanks to Kevin Knight, our guest, and the listeners and the viewers of the Believe in Steelers show. I will see you Sunday. Happy start of the NFL season. Until then, take care, and so long, everybody.